introduce somebody we're very lucky to have with us today, and someone who means a whole lot to the entire environmental community of New York State. And I know a lot of the people here today have had the privilege and the pleasure of working with Ms. Judith Enck. Judith is probably one of the most recognizable, vocal, and at times notorious advocates for environmental protection in New York State. She has been lucky enough, and we've been lucky enough, that she's made it her career ever since she first got out of college. And she's touched many organizations in the state and touched the lives of all of us, whether you know it or not. First is her leadership at EPL, Environmental Planning Lobby, which is actually the organization which later became Environmental Advocates of New York. Also at the New York Public Interest Research Group, the Attorney General's Office, where she was the policy advisor within the Environmental Protection Bureau. She was most recently the Governor's Deputy Secretary for the Environment. And now has been elevated to the position within President Obama's administration as the Regional Administrator for EPA Region 2, who is responsible for oversight of environmental protection programs in New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So, direct from her tour of the Caribbean. And we also want to our appreciation that we hope to see in her office, which apparently has come apart somewhat. So we'll be reassembling this. Yes. This was done on a budget that you can appreciate. And thank you again for coming to birthday.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Laura. Appreciated the trip down memory lane of birthdays past. It's really great to be in Albany. What I love is that leading the parade today is a snapping turtle, not a bog turtle. I think that makes a good statement. So 4.5 years ago, President Obama appointed me to be Regional Administrator for EPA Region 2. And if nothing else quite works out for me, I was just happy to have my name in the same sentence as President Barack Obama. That's all I needed. It's been a fun 4.5 months. I'm working under Administrator Lisa Jackson, who's just been a phenomenal national leader on a whole bunch of environmental issues. The way EPA is set up, there are 10 regions. I have New York. I have the tribal nations within New York. New Jersey, with its 112 federal Superfund sites, the most of any state in the nation. And also I have Puerto Rico, and sadly the U.S. Virgin Islands. And no matter what I say, no one believes me when I go to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, I actually am working very hard when I'm there. There are no drinks with umbrellas on them. There are no beach visits. I am in meetings from morning till night, trying to clean up drinking water quality. There's no recycling in the Caribbean islands, so we're launching next week a Puerto Rico recycling partnership and a Virgin Islands recycling partnership. And I'm very sensitive when people make fun of my commitment to the Caribbean, Rob, more. But it's really good to be with you on the eve of the 40th anniversary of Earth Day. It's also the 40th anniversary of EPA. EPA was established by Richard Nixon, showing a bipartisan commitment to environmental protection. And I think at moments like this, it's good for us to think about what's our planet going to look like in the next 40 years, in fast forward to 2050? What'll happen if we don't make real and sustained progress on tackling climate change, for instance? The 15 hottest years on record have all occurred since 1991. 1/3 of the Arctic sea ice has melted in the last 30 years. And so I'm glad that you were tackling this issue on your list of issues that you're pursuing today. I want to point out that the states have been real leaders on environmental protection. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, the first mandatory cap and trade program for power plants for carbon in the nation. The bottle bill saves huge amounts of energy. And this is one of the few Earth Day lobby days that Laura Height is not struggling to put up the 50-foot inflatable bottle. So that's progress. People in this room worked real hard last legislative session to set up the Green Jobs, Green New York program that's going to retrofit and weatherize scores of homes across the state. And I think what often happens is the states are the innovators. They are the laboratories. And then the federal government eventually follows. And if you look at the pattern, how do the states get there? It's because of one simple truth. When the people lead, the leaders will follow. So it starts with you all, it goes to your local governments, states, federal. And eventually the federal government catches up. For instance, on April 1st, Administrator Jackson and Department of Transportation announced the new fuel economy standards. This is the largest leap in fuel efficiency standards since they were first established in the 1970s. It raises minimum mileage requirements. Mileage requirements to 35 miles per gallon by 2016 for all cars, SUVs, and minivans. Why is this important? 1/5 of our greenhouse gas emissions is from vehicles. And because of Lisa Jackson and President Obama, this is the first time that we are regulating greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. There is a real linkage to environmental justice issues. At EPA, all of the issues we look at are through the prism of environmental justice. We recognize that low-income and minority communities shoulder a disproportionate burden of pollution, and more affluent communities shoulder. And if you look at issues like air quality, there are 370,000 kids in New York that suffer with asthma, and more than 1 million adults. A lot of the most polluting facilities are located in poor neighborhoods. That is a legacy that we are not proud of. So the level of air pollution controls matter, where facilities are sited matter, and we've got to acknowledge that we need to do better cleaning up the air for everyone. It's an issue that EPA is taking seriously. Some of you have met Lisa Garcia, formerly of DEC, and before that with NYPIRG. She was recently appointed to be the EPA Senior Policy Advisor on Environmental Justice. We have a lot going on Superfund. This summer, we'll be announcing whether or not we're proceeding with phase 2 of getting PCBs out of the Hudson River. That's been a long and tedious journey. Dredging actually started last summer. There's now a peer review process going on. We'll know by the end of this summer if we are proceeding with phase 2. Now I want to talk a little bit about the state budget cuts. I know that they are very, very serious, and unfortunately we're experiencing this across the country. The federal government is doing what it can. EPA is very mindful of the reduced staffing and enforcement at regulatory agencies. The President and Congress championed the ARRA, the stimulus package. That got $150 billion out to state and local governments last year alone. And if you look at the stimulus, I think it's a reflection of this administration's environmental priorities. A lot of money was plowed into clean, renewable energy projects. A lot of money was plowed into cleaning up dirty diesel vehicles. We were able to jumpstart cleanups at some federal Superfund sites and brownfield sites. And most notably, huge sums of money were committed for clean water. In fact, the state of New York received the largest check in EPA history. Dareth was there about 2 years ago, and it was to clean up and upgrade drinking water supplies and sewage treatment plants. Within that, there's a 20% set aside for green infrastructure, a different way to approach how to manage wastewater. So can the feds pick up the difference in state cuts? No. But we know that there are some great people inside state government who are working to manage the problem. Within the governor's office, you have the A-team. You have the absolutely most dedicated, skilled, and knowledgeable staffers that you want at the table during these daunting economic times. Peter Iwanowitz as Deputy Secretary for the Environment,